Welcome back to Unsolicited Feedback, the podcast where we cut through the noise, skip the corporate jargon, and get real about what actually drives results. Because let's be honest, hope is not a business strategy. I'm your host, Chuck Knabusch, the operations guy. And after 40 plus years across the military, corporate America, and now entrepreneurship, I've seen what works, what breaks, and why leadership, planning, and execution are the great separators between average and exceptional results. As you're catching the replay, send your thoughts or challenges directly to me at chuck@1310.com, and you'll see that address scroll across the bottom of your screen here momentarily. As your time matters, let's jump straight into today's topic: how to run leadership team meetings that actually fix problems, improve systems, and move the organization forward. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're tackling something that every leader has experienced. Every leadership team complains about, and every organization desperately wants to improve. Leadership team meetings. Specifically, why do they so often turn into complaint sessions? Status updates that nobody listens to and probably could have been handled in an email, and circular conversations that don't actually fix anything. And even worse, why everyone leaves the room feeling like they just spent an hour or two in a corporate group therapy session instead of genuinely running the business. I've sat in these meetings myself, in billion-dollar organizations and in small family-owned businesses, and everywhere in between. And I've watched leadership teams with incredibly smart people waste enormous amounts of time because they didn't have a real structure or process to follow. Some of those meetings were so unproductive, I swear, we could have replaced the entire leadership team with a magic 8-ball, and the results would have been about the same. Should we fix this problem? Shake, ask again later. So today we're going to change that. This video lays out a hard-hitting, no-nonsense, research-backed, experience-driven framework for leadership meetings that actually do what they're supposed to do: solve real problems, improve systems, remove obstacles, align teams, accelerate execution, and improve the entire organization. We're going to walk through this using the proven structure you'll love. 1, this is the biggest problem. 2, the biggest symptom. 3, what most people tried to do to fix it. 4, why those solutions rarely work. And 5, the one thing that actually moves the needle. And of course, I'll include stories, counterintuitive lessons, and hard facts, some field-tested experience from decades in manufacturing, operations, leadership, and executive coaching. All right, let's get into it. This is the biggest problem. Leadership team meetings lack structure, discipline, and purpose. That's the simple version. But underneath that, there are 3 deeper problems that most leaders don't even see. First, a lack of structure generally equals chaos. Most leadership meetings happen like this. Everyone arrives at the last minute. The leader says, all right, let's go around the room. People share updates. Those updates trigger reactions. Those reactions trigger complaints. When somebody hijacks a conversation, we then get into a side debate. Someone else starts venting. People defend their departments, and 45 minutes go by before anyone realizes nothing has been decided. That's not a meeting. It's a live action LinkedIn, a stream of commentary with no outcome. And the worst part, nobody owns the result. Nobody leaves with decisions. Nobody leaves with a clear next action. Nobody leaves with accountability. They just leave. And the business stays exactly where it was. B, the second thing, meetings become therapy instead of leadership. Here's the truth nobody likes to say out loud. When there's no agenda, the loudest or most emotional voice wins. And the leadership meeting becomes a frustration dump, a share your pain circle, a place to justify why goals aren't being met, a venue to complain about other functions, a rerun of last week's conversations. It feels like sharing. It feels like being transparent. It feels like collaboration, but it's not. It's emotional processing disguised as leadership. And while feelings matter, they don't fix systems, processes, staffing problems, KPI issues, or strategy gaps. We need clarity, not catharsis. Meetings don't run the business. They report the business. Here's the counterintuitive part. Most leadership meetings are not leadership meetings. They're status meetings wearing a leadership mask. But reporting is not leadership. Reporting tells you what happened. Leadership decides what must happen next. Reporting describes the past. Leadership creates the future. Reporting explains what went wrong. Leadership aligns the team to fix it. Too many leadership meetings simply recap activity instead of drive action. And organizations suffer from it because the meeting, the one place where the entire leadership team is together, never actually makes decisions. When the meeting doesn't drive the business forward, the business doesn't move forward. The systems don't improve because meetings don't improve. Here's something I learned managing an $80 million single source plywood cutting facility. When leadership meetings are weak, systems remain weak. Why? Because system problems require cross-functional alignment, prioritization, resource allocation, decision-making, clarity, sequencing, accountability, follow-up, and time discipline. And the only place all those things converge is in the leadership team meeting. In one company I worked with, the leadership team had been discussing production imbalance between cutting and assembly for 3 months. Every week, same topic, same frustration, same finger pointing. But nobody ever sat down and said, all right, let's define the problem, identify the root cause, assign ownership, and fix it. Why not? Because the meeting had no standard. When the leadership meeting lacks structure, everything else in the business inherits that lack of structure. E. Time is the most wasted resource. Harvard Business Review found 71% of senior leaders say meetings are unproductive. The average executive spends 23 hours per week in meetings. And over 60% say meetings keep them from completing strategic work. Imagine if your top leaders had 20 to 30% more time for process improvement, innovation, coaching, training, planning, eliminating bottlenecks. That's the cost of weak leadership meetings. That's why this topic matters so much. So, what's the biggest symptoms? The same problems come up week after week after week after week, and nothing actually changes. This is the organizational equivalent of deja vu, and I'd like to say all over again. You know you're in trouble when leadership team meetings sound like reruns. Didn't we talk about this last week? We still haven't fixed that? Weren't we supposed to have an update on this? I thought we agreed somebody would follow up on that. When leadership meetings lack structure, you see very clear symptoms. Symptom number 1, no decisions get made. Everything ends with, let's keep looking into it, or we should revisit this next time. Maybe we need to study this more. Translation, we're scared to make a real decision. Symptom 2, issues get talked to death. Problems feel like they're being addressed because they're being discussed, but discussing is not solving. Symptom 3, everyone brings problems, but nobody brings solutions because the meeting doesn't require solutions. It only requires complaining. Symptom 4, accountability becomes optional. Without structure, commitments aren't reviewed, deadlines aren't set, owners aren't aligned, follow-up doesn't happen. And if accountability is optional in the leadership meeting, it becomes optional everywhere. Symptom 5, firefighting becomes the operating system. When problems don't get solved in leadership meetings, they get solved reactively on the shop floor. So here are some of your cues. Constant chaos, heroics, short-term band-aids, reoccurring issues, exhausted supervisors, disengaged employees, and frustrated customers. A weak leadership meeting guarantees tactical firestorms. Symptom 6, the culture deteriorates. This one's kind of sneaky. When leaders sit in unproductive meetings, they lose trust, they lose energy, they lose belief in the process, they lose momentum, and eventually they lose each other. People privately say, "Why am I even here? This is a waste of my time." Nothing ever changes. And once leaders mentally check out, performance falls across the entire organization. So what are some things that most people try to do to fix the problem? This is where things get really interesting because most leadership teams try the same fixes and all of them seem reasonable, but none of them work. Let's break down the common attempts. A, let's shorten the meeting. I know, let's cut the meeting from 2 hours to 1. Sounds good, right? The only problem is this: shortening an unproductive meeting just creates shorter unproductive meetings. Efficiency is not the same as effectiveness. B, going around the room. This is the number one pattern that I see. Let's go around the room. Marketing, you start. It feels organized. It feels fair. It feels structured. But it guarantees endless updates, unequal airtime, no prioritization, and no problem solving. It's the meeting version of a potluck dinner where everyone brings something, but none of it goes together. C, adding more reports. Some leaders try and fix the meeting by requiring more spreadsheets, more charts, more status updates, more data dumps, more slide decks. More information does not equal more clarity. In fact, more information usually hides the real issues. D, making the agenda long and detailed. I've seen agendas with 22 items. 22. A 22-item agenda doesn't mean structure. It means denial. If everything is important, then nothing is. Trying to fix every issue in one meeting. This is where meetings go to die. You can't solve staffing, quality, on-time delivery, customer complaints, production variances, system issues, supply shortages, and shipping delays all in one session. Yet many leaders try. And the result is predictable. Everything gets talked about. Nothing gets solved. F, letting the loudest voice win. Not on purpose. It just happens. Because without structure, the meeting defaults to the most emotional person, the most frustrated person, the most senior person, or the most talkative person. None of these methods are strategic. Turning the meeting into show and tell. Everybody brings their metrics, their challenges, their grievances. Everyone explains why their department can't hit targets. Everyone wants airtime. But the meeting becomes a highlight reel of excuses instead of a roadmap to performance. So why do those solutions rarely work? Here's the real root cause. Leadership meetings fail because they lack standard work. Just like production, just like quality, or even safety, just like any other repeatable process in the organization. Leadership meetings are a process, but most companies treat them as a free-form discussion. When there is no standard work, people default to emotion. Conversations default to complaints. Decisions default to later. Accountability defaults to someone else. And outcomes default to, we'll see what happens. Let's look at a few reasons the common attempts don't work. A lack of time discipline. Meetings expand to fill whatever space you give them. If you don't time box, whether it's a dashboard review, issue prioritization, or decision making, or accountability checks, the meeting will drift, delay, and derail. Humans love talking, but hate deciding. Talking feels productive. It releases dopamine. It feels collaborative. Decisions, they feel risky. They create discomfort. They create accountability. And therefore, they create conflict. So without structure, the meeting will lean toward talking because talking is safe. See, people protect their silos. Without a set process, marketing defends marketing. Sales defends sales. Operations defends operations. HR explains HR's challenges. And finance tries to rein everybody in. Suddenly, the meeting isn't about running the company. It's about protecting turf. Structure neutralizes silos. D. Problems are treated as events instead of systems. Here's a painful truth. Most problems discussed in leadership meetings are symptoms. They're not root causes, not systemic issues, not process failures. When the meeting lacks a problem-solving structure, leaders spend time firefighting instead of fixing the underlying system. E. No one owns the outcome. When ownership isn't assigned, the group defaults to shared accountability. And shared accountability is the fastest route to nothing happening. The meeting doesn't force owner, action, due date, follow-up. It's not a leadership meeting. It's a commentary session. So what's the one thing that actually moves the needle? Here's the solution. Implement a standardized, time-boxed, accountability-focused leadership meeting operating system. This is more than an agenda. It's a repeatable process with defined steps that always produce clarity, decisions, and action. Here's the system. A. Step 1. Ground rules, 5 minutes. These set the tone. Attack problems, not people. Facts over feelings. 1. SOT. Every problem ends with an owner, action, and a due date. No rehashing last week's arguments. Keep comments concise. This alone eliminates 60% of drama. Step 2. Dashboard reviews. 15 minutes. Everybody reviews their top 3 to 5 KPIs. They're color-coded. Green, no discussion. Yellow, caution. Red, needs action. And only red items get airtime. This prevents meeting sprawl. Step 3, commitments review. 10 minutes. Each leader answers one question. Did you complete your commitment from last week? If not, what blocked you? What support do you need? What's the new date? This creates a culture of follow-through. Step 4, capture and prioritize issues. 20 minutes. Leaders quickly list issues in 1 to 2 sentences, then categorize them. Are they customer impacting, operational, people, systems and processes, or strategic? Then prioritize them based on the impact on organizational goals, the cross-functional ripple, or urgency. Then select the top 3, never more than 3. Step 5, solve the top 3. Take 30 minutes. For each issue, define the problem, identify the root cause, agree on 1 to 2 next actions, assign a single owner, and set a due date. Document it in the action tracker. This step transforms the meeting from a complaint session into a problem-solving engine. Step 6, strategic alignment scan. 5 minutes. Each leader answers, is there anything happening in your area that could affect company goals? This prevents surprises. Step 7, communication cascade. 5 minutes. Before anyone leaves, each leader states what they're communicating to their teams, decisions made, and owners and deadlines. This ensures alignment. Now you have the full system. This is the difference between leadership meetings that drain energy and leadership meetings that drive performance. If you implement the structure consistently for 4 to 6 weeks, you'll see clearer decisions, better follow-through, fewer surprises, stronger cross-functional alignment, faster problem resolution, and improved business performance. because leadership is not about talking. Leadership is about deciding, aligning, and executing, and improving the systems that run the business. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Unsolicited Feedback. Thanks for joining me, but don't just nod along. Apply something from today's conversation, because results don't show up just from listening. They show up because you did something. Even one small action this week will move the needle farther than a month of good intentions. If you want to go deeper, scan the QR code or schedule a 30-minute strategy chat. I'd love to hear how you're using planning, leadership, and execution to make sure hope never becomes your business strategy. Drop a comment and like the episode. Once again, I'm Chuck Knabusch. Until next time, stay focused, stay disciplined, and don't you dare rely on hope.